Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And if I didn't have a chance to talk to you, a great Memorial weekend. So let's get this thing started and kind of start with our buyer session number one. So let me go ahead and share the packets. And if you have any questions, just put them next to your screen and we'll try to answer them during or at the end. Okay? All right, so let me do that. Okay, so welcome to How to Conduct a Buyer Consultation. Part one, how to qualify and getting the appointment. Okay, so kind of a really important points to make just from the start is always remember you're the driver of the bus and responsible for all the communications, the coordination of not only the contract and the sale, but actually the mortgage process, the inspections, and the closing. Never assume that the other parties are performing. So one of my great old school sayings is inspect what you expect. I don't know how many times I've heard from different, agents along the process or the lenders, and the lenders really are probably the biggest deal. They don't communicate uh, like they should. Sometimes the packet's not turned in, sometimes the paperwork's not turned in. So we're going to go into more detail on this in a different session, but always remember you are accountable to the transaction every step, because when that buyer is not happy or when that buyer is not closed, they're going to remember you. So always follow up. Okay, so the objective today is how to schedule an in-office appointment, how to pre-qualify your buyer, and lastly, what I always like to do, and you have to do what you're comfortable with, but I recommend because time is always precious, I always email my questionnaire packet prior for the interview or the review and or the consultation, excuse me, so they at least get a chance to fill that stuff out and kind of set up an expectation that it's a business meeting, that time is always of the essence, and kind of get a feel again of what you're going to cover and what kind of questions that are important. Okay, and just to kind of let you know, session two, which we'll put the schedule out later on today, is going to be how to conduct the actual buyer's consultation and setting the expectations. Always, always, always set the expectations up front. And also, the consultation, one of the main goals is to better understand their goals and their expectations as well. Communication is the key. Communicate as much as possible up front. So when possible, always schedule consultations in the office. This is the most professional and safest option. It also allows you to block time and to be as thorough as possible. It's just more professional. It's just that you're going to totally focus on that particular client. And if you have it at Starbucks or, your home office, or even, just anywhere, you're going to be distracted with people walking in and out and that kind of thing. So we have a beautiful office here too. So please utilize it. And if you do, speaking of that, need to schedule the conference room, always contact Lindsay and get that blocked. Okay. So the key here is to do all your talking before you go out to look at the houses, so you aren't wasting time looking at houses that are not what the buyers want or expect. In my history, one of the biggest things I've heard over and over again is a complaint by a buyer is my agent is not sending me houses that I'm interested in. I don't think they're listening to me. I've even heard of some agents sending 2 stories because they think their client would be happier in a 2-story, but the client is saying, no, I want a ranch. So this is going to be a great system to put in place to kind of alleviate even the simplest issues that might arise. Okay, so a sample script may be, is Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'd like to invite you to come into the office so we can discuss what you're looking for in your next home. That way, we'll limit our search to the homes that fit your criteria and avoid wasting your time. In addition, buying a home is a huge decision. It's very important that you are comfortable with the step-by-step process before we're in the middle of the negotiations. Are weekends or weekdays better for you? Again, you don't want to have to explain in the heat of the moment. And as we all know, sometimes, negotiating a contract, especially when there's multiple offers, or time restraints, it's just very, very emotional. So it's great, again, to have them come into the office to have a controlled, stress-free, minimal emotion environment as possible. They'll listen to you more. Okay. So you've called them, you've asked them to come in, and let me go back down. And you've made the appointment. Another thing that I suggest is only give them two options. If they say weekdays, weekends, that's great, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. How about 10 a.m. on a Saturday or 4 p.m. on a Sunday? Only give them two options. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, you want to block your time. Two, you want to seem and appear busy and your schedule's full. And three, you just want to be accountable, in a professional way. So, again, just take control from the beginning, set the expectation that you're the driver of the bus. Okay. Let me get to my page 2. Here we go. Please refer, that's another thing I wanted to bring up, excuse me. Please refer to the scripts in the reference library on the URE intranet. I have tons of listing objections on there, different types of scripts. I'm always finding better scripts. And a lot of people say, I don't like scripts. I don't feel natural with them. I kind of get that. I'm a naturally talkative person, so, conversations on the phone kind of come easy to me. But scripts usually give you the 3 points that you want to hit. So let's talk about those a little bit, why we're in this particular session. Number one goal for you always is to understand and qualify if they're a ready, able, and willing buyer. Scripts will help you stay on track with that. You need to know the urgency of your client, the ability of your client. So again, make the scripts your own, put your own personality into those, but still make sure that you hit those 3 points. Okay, so let's go back. Before you conduct a buyer consultation, talk to your buyers about pre-qualifying for a loan. And also too, some people, especially on the phone, and this is where your DISC comes in. If you've got a high C, they're going to want to process it. They're not going to want to get into a lot of financial information or a lot of questions on the phone. So again, this might be a great opportunity, and this is for you to decide, it's a personal choice, if you're going to go into more detail. You might have a high D. I want answers now. Or you might want to reiterate, take your time, go into the financing part of it a little bit more face-to-face. I think it makes people a little bit more comfortable. And again, they can soak it all in. Okay, so there is a difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval. A pre-qual is when a lender evaluates how much the buyer can afford to borrow using only the information the buyer provides on their income and credit information. Not as strong. Okay, before I go into that, let me emphasize again, this is only what the buyer has stated in most cases. They'll run credit, which is, the tri-merge. They'll take the middle score. They'll not necessarily ask for W-2s at this point. They're not getting a lot of employment information. So again, this is the very, very basic first step into the whole process. Okay, so I make a point here in blue. Pre-qual is not as strong, and a savvy listing agent will know this. This is important in a seller's market in cases of competing offers. Do your buyers a favor. Let them know that. let them know how it works. If you got a multiple offer on a listing, and you've got a seasoned agent or an educated agent, they're going to see this is one's a pre-approval and this one's a pre-qual. Well, hello. I mean, this person can state their income being X amount of dollars, and when the rubber meets the road, it's going to find out they're a 1099 self-employed person as opposed to a W-2. That's always one of my very first questions I ask out of the gate, if they're self-employed or not. But we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. Okay, so pre-approval is a more involved process in which the lender actually verifies the buyer's income, which is usually four pay periods, or excuse me, 4 months of pay stubs, income, of course, their employment. Are they W-2'd? How long have they been employed? Have they been employed for 2 years? Have they had a break of employment? Are they getting tips? All those kind of things. Is their income that they stated, is that include bonuses? So these are the things that you always want to scratch the surface on. Okay, so all that would be needed for final loan approval is appraisal and title. Okay, so I've heard some people say, well, my lender won't give me a pre-approval without a property address. I would suggest to you strongly to talk to another lender, because that's just, they're being lazy. You most certainly can do that, and then they'll firm it up, of course, when all the address is provided and the contract's provided. Okay, I suggest that you have a checklist of the most frequently asked for items from your preferred lender. Please participate in this process to work as a team to ensure that you have all docs that are required and turned in a timely manner. So again, let your buyer know, maybe not on the phone with the initial conversation, but most certainly in your buyer consultation. These items are what you can expect to give to a lender. And please know why. One of the biggest things I've always coached on and trained on, be savvy with financing. Know your programs. Know a difference between a USDA and an FHA. That is really the deal breaker for most of these purchases. So we're going to get into a lot more of that. I have a special class, might have a lender come in and talk about the FHAs specifically, or, the variables of, conventional and all those different things. Okay. So here's a sample, another sample script. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, it's important that you speak with a lender before you begin your home search. Pre-qualification is just a determination of how much money you will be eligible to borrow. It should only take about 15 minutes. And once you're pre-qualified, then you'll be in a better position to move forward and look for the houses that you really can afford. One of the worst things that you can do is take out a buyer and you have no idea what their affordability is, and you show them way too expensive of a house and they fall in love with it. Okay, so let's go on. One of the things that I included, and again, it's up to you to do this over the phone. I think these are comfortable enough to do on the phone. That's why I put this really quick list together for you. So here's some of the questions that you can ask when speaking to someone. So of course, we've all learned over and over again, are you currently under a buyer's agency? So some people like to say, are you obligated? If they're not under a buyer's agency, do you feel obligated to another agent at this time? Okay, so again, that's one of the first things we need to find out if we're allowed to work with them legally. Have you spoke with the lender? If you have, what did your lender say? I mean, what were you qualified for? But once they speak to a lender, they're usually very open about giving that type of information. So hopefully, the lender has educated them as well. One of my favorites is, what is your time frame? This sets you up for all kinds of different things. One way I like to put it is is, what is your, I'm sorry, somebody just knocked on my door. What is your time frame? When do you see yourself in a home? When do you see yourself, closing on a home? So if they say 60 days from now, you need to start the process. If they say, I call that an A buyer. If they say 90 to 120 days, then of course you've got a little bit of time. Another reason why I say that is because if they're not able to close on a home in 60 or 90 days, worst case scenario, then don't show them houses and educate them and say, well, more likely in this market, and you can provide them with supporting documentation that these same houses won't be available at that time. Another thing is, do you own now? Are you currently leasing? So again, do you own now? That can give you an idea of how savvy of a buyer they are. They've been through this experience before. You can ask them, was that a good experience? Was that a negative experience? We'll go into that more on the consultation sheet. And obviously, currently leasing is, are they, obligated to a 6-month lease? Now there's some situations where you can get bought out of the lease. You can negotiate that lease costs and closing costs and a whole bunch of different things. And we'll get into more of that in our negotiation class. Okay, so will you be personally occupying the home, or will it be an investment or vacation home? Key, that determines a lot. If they're not personally occupying the home, or it's an investment for them, that's going to determine what type of home, what type of loan, all kinds of things. If you're going to be a FHA buyer, 3.5% down, you're going to have to be an owner occupied. So let's see what else we have here. One thing I like, instead of how much house, $200,000 house, I like to ask them, what are you currently paying and what are you comfortable with going forward? People think in monthly payment. They do not think of 250,000 or 200,000 or that type of thing. That is really, really important. And when we get into more marketing and lead generation training, that is a great way, with certain stipulations, that is a great way to market a home. Market with monthly payment. Okay, are you W-2 employee or self-employed? Okay, again, we're talking about financing there. Self-employed is going to be a little bit more of a challenge sometimes, because income tax returns, to be honest, we're the honest on them, because they go per their Schedule C and their net income. All right. So again, are you prepared to provide your last 2 years of tax returns? Are you current? Tax liens, if they're not current on their taxes, federal tax, it could be a judgment, and there's not a bank around that's going to lend on that. Again, we're going to get into a lot of financing. Financing is the key. A lot of realtors are very uncomfortable talking about financing up front because they don't know it. But listen, let me tell you, if you're pre-qualifying a buyer, don't you think you want to know if they have a federal tax lien from the beginning without taking them around for 2 weeks in your car? Then all of a sudden you find out. Very, very important. Again, you're the driver of the bus. Control, be professional, ask the uncomfortable questions. They expect you to. And if you break the ice about the financials, they'll appreciate it because they don't know how to bring it up. You're the professional. Okay. Did you know your year-to-date gross income and your estimated debt monthly payout? A good rule of thumb is maybe 24-36, meaning that their top 24 ratio, their revolving debt, is 24% of their gross income. The 36 is a combination of that with their house payment. Big time flexibility here. I think some FHAs, depends upon the overlays that we talked about in the last meeting, can go up to 51 or 52%. Have a good lender that you can ask these questions. Okay, and I went in to explain that a little bit better. Are you prepared to make a down payment? If so, how much? Do you need assistance with closing the costs? Number one pet peeve, if you ever call me and we're talking about writing your first contract, the first thing out of my mouth will be this: who's the lender? What did they say? And then one of the worst things I can hear, I don't know who the lender is. Bad answer. Worst answer in the world. How in the heck are you writing a contract when you don't know, either by speaking with the lender or having it in your pre-approval letter, how much money are you going to negotiate closing costs? Do they need $3,000, $4,000? What's the most they qualify for? What's their down payment? Are you going to be writing an FHA deal? You're going to be writing 100% USDA deal? I mean, you have to know these things up front. Another big deal, because it's time sensitive. Have you ever filed bankruptcy? Have you ever had a foreclosure or a judgment? Again, these are going to affect credit scores, obviously. And in bankruptcy and foreclosure, there's certain, and it depends upon the type, but there's time frames with that. You cannot buy a house outside of bankruptcy or foreclosure without some legal stipulations to that. So I am not going to go into those right now. It's going to depend on if it was a conventional foreclosure, FHA, VA, all those kind of things. But again, how exciting. This stuff is so exciting. You get to learn that in another class. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. And again, when we do this type of training, this only scratches the surface. So again, if you have any questions after the fact, you want to email me. I'm more than happy to take some time. Also too, we do have our one-on-one coaching program, which I'm love to share some information about. Okay, so here is one example. You're thinking, okay, great, Janice, I got them on the call. I'm going to set up an appointment. They're going to come to the office. What should I give them prior so they can start looking at? Again, it's up to you, but I have some suggestions that you might want to consider. And everybody has their own style and different things they want to include. But again, you always have to keep people excited. You always have to keep them engaged, because timing is everything. And if you're not constantly, touching base and following up, another agent will. And remember, you don't have them under buyer agency necessarily yet. Okay, so one example is, this is mine that I used to use, and I love to save time. I have one for a seller and one for a buyer. So one is just my little commitment to you, and then some different basic questions. And my joke is to kind of lighten the mood is, hey, I'm going to go ahead and send this questionnaire over. It really helps you get clear on what you're looking for. Have fun with it. You and your husband can have a glass of wine, sit in your jammies, and fill out the questions. It's amazing how different, a married couple, for example, have an idea of what they're looking for. I mean, sometimes they're polar opposites. So you don't want to always be a part of that process. Let them work that out by themselves, and this is a perfect tool for them to do that. So I'm just going to go briefly over a few of these questions. I want to keep an eye on our time. But what are some of the reasons you're in the market for a new home? Again, these are going to be their hot buttons that you get to follow up and reiterate to them if they get off track a little bit. Have you ever bought or sold a house before? Again, we're wanting to see what kind of experience they had in the past, or how experienced of a buyer they are. Do you have a home to sell before you purchase the next home? Again, that's so important on so many levels. One, an opportunity for a listing. Two, it is, it's going to affect the purchase of the other one. Is it going to be a home sale contingent? Do they have to sell it, of course, to purchase the other ones? That's financing. So some good questions. Is it currently on the market? And then if so, you want to see how aggressively it's priced in the market today. Because again, if you're asking another seller to take a home sale contingency, you're going to have to make sure that you can present them the best light. Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, please accept our home sale contingency because this is priced aggressively. It's in a great subdivision. Average days on market is 30. It's 5,000 below list. I mean, you can say all kinds of different things. But again, you're representing the buyer, so you always want to paint the best picture. We talked about this a little bit. Are you currently in a lease? How much time is left? Because that's a legal issue. You do not want them to affect their credit. Could you get out of the lease early? And then we kind of shift gears a little bit. What internet sites have you been using to look at properties? Again, if they're on Zillow, that might set you up with, don't go to Zillow. Come to me for the most up-to-date information. Another good thing is for investing, where are you going to invest your marketing dollars? If you do these consultations and you see people constantly on realtor.com or Trulia or farming postcards, hello, that's where you invest your money. Have you been looking at real estate with any other agents? Do you feel obligated to that agent? Why or why not? Well, again, this can give you an indication of what you need to do. Do they communicate? Are they giving the appropriate information? Are they sending them the right homes? I always hear that one. We talked about this. How soon would you like to be in your home? What area would you most like to live in? Why? I need a yard. I have dogs. I have kids, great schools. Again, you're listening to their passion of what's important to them. Because when you're showing homes and they're getting off track and they're getting frustrated, you're going to bring this sheet back out to them, or maybe even do a new one and revisit it and remind them of what their goals are. Okay? This is a good one. Would you prefer to see existing, a new build, foreclosure, or short sales? Please, the latter two, short sales and foreclosures. Do not do that if you're a new agent without speaking to me first. That's a whole different world. That's a whole different expectation. And their type of loan may not allow them to purchase an as-is or a foreclosure. So again, we're going to go into that with more training. Let's see what else we have in. Have you ever visited any builder models? Get them registered. Let them know they have to register and tell the sales managers that they're working with you. I kind of point that out with registration form. We talked about a mortgage. This is the one that you really need to revisit. Okay, wants, needs, and dreams. Okay, they're going to go through this and they're going to pick out what the requirements are in the bathrooms and formal dining room. But this section here, name your 5 must-haves in your new home. You're going to use this to close. I had an experience once that I had a guy that I took and was showing 10 houses. He wouldn't pull the trigger. Now, I did a lot of homework up front to make sure these were the right homes for him. So each home, and I'll show you a scorecard later, but I knew this was the right home for him, but I wanted him to own it. And his wife is getting frustrated. For some reason, he would not sign his name. So what I did was, Mr. Buyer, you said you wanted a 3-car garage as a must-have. You wanted to be in this subdivision. You wanted it to have this floor plan, an open floor plan. You wanted this, and that. I went over and named his must-haves. Do you agree with me that this home offers everything that you said you wanted? He looked at me. He knew I had him. He goes, yes. Okay, let's go back to the office and write up an offer. Seriously, that you guys, you have to remind them, because they are the biggest motivator sometimes, or lack of motivation, is fear. You've got to make them feel confident in your services, confident in your ability, and confident enough to overcome the fear of making one of the largest purchases in their lives. Own the 5 must-haves. Listen while you're going through the house with them. Okay, but we'll go through that again as well. Another thing that I like to send over, and again, we're talking about what you should put in your packet. You guys might have heard this already. New agents, you will hear this. We have to be credible. Again, this is their largest purchase. Put things in the packet that that they will know who you are, what company. They, United Real Estate is a huge company. This was founded in 1928. Provide this, and we were on the Undercover Boss. These are two flyers that I came across that I think they're absolutely beautiful, very professionally done. Um, Put these in your packets. I sent out yesterday, meet the team that Fallon put together. Add these to your packets. They want to know that you're not some fly by night real estate company that's going to be out of business in 30 to 60 days. Add credibility. Also, I always used to like to add a resume of maybe some testimonials of people that have worked with you. Yes, we do those virtually, but it's nice to have those in nicely presented packages as well. How you do business. One of the questions that in the presentation, in the consultation, you're going to ask, how do you like to communicate? If you have a preferred way yourself personally, set that up in the beginning. Educate, communicate. Do you not take calls after 8 o'clock at night? Believe me, you have to let them know how you expect to do business and have an open line of communication so you can hear their expectations as well. Okay. Another thing that I'd like to include is an overview of the home buying and selling process. I'm a very detailed, very processed person. I love this kind of stuff. I may not always read it word for word, but it makes me feel more confident that my agent presented this to me. That appears to me that they know the process, they're confident, and they're professional. So include this. You can actually get this off of the intranet, and then also Maris, or excuse me, Forms or Us has this as well. And again, this is something you're going to send to them prior to meeting them. So, how is that going to look? They're going to see that how you work. They're just going to like everything that they see. Another thing, and this is one that I just found in the office, give them some financing information. If you have a preferred lender, have them put something together specifically for you. I just think that this particular company has some really nice presentation material. So put something in your lender and how he works and what his expectations are. On the meet the team sheet, you all should have one as well. You should have one with you, a partner, your lender, your preferred lender, or your home inspector. That's part of everything. So when you guys have team meetings, by all means, they're part of your team. Bring them in. Here's another thing. Know before you show. This is for us. I thought I'd add that in there. Read through that as well. I can go on and on with your packets. So I hope this kind of makes it a little bit more clear of, the very basics of what you can expect. Again, to go over it, you got the buyer on the phone. You ask them, you get a feel of what kind of personality, how open. You're going to have to draw them out a little bit, and I have scripts for that. You go into the very basics of finance. You go into the appointment time of setting, the appointment. Go through Maris with them. Put together your own packet of what you're going to cover in the appointment. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is what you can expect when we meet for the consultation. We're going to look at a couple of homes in your criteria. We're going to touch base on financing. We're going to talk about your wants and needs and dreams. I'm going to fill you in on the entire process of, I even at one time gave them a sample of a sales contract. This is what you're going to be signing. These are the contingencies. But I'm going to do a whole separate training session on what that looks like, because I think that is key. That is the first date. That is the first impression. This is how your entire transaction is going to usually go from there. Okay? So if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me. And then we'll upload this on Facebook, on our private group page, and of course our YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. Have a great day.